Yeah.
Where I had fly out and started, the arena they have down there. And,
Morning.
So good afternoon. It's Wednesday, January 21st. It's 4 o'clock and this is the Palm Springs Airport Committee meeting. Gonna call this over. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner, stand to lead us, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sir, Mariana, is the agenda posted?
Yes, the agenda was posted.
Let's do a roll call, please.
Roll call Burke,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Here.
Corcoran,
Yes.
Evansteiner,
Yes.
Fong, Hedrick,
Here.
Peel, Martin.
Yeah, here.
McDermott, Park, Semlanska,
Here.
Shuffler,
Here.
Valdez,
Here.
Boss,
Present.
Wiseman. 1 second. He's on Zoom, it looks like. Let me go ahead and turn my phone. Wiseman?
Here.
Thank you. And Wise? Wise? Young? Thank you. We have a quorum.
Excellent. Any changes to the agenda? No? Let's go ahead and take a roll call, please.
Burke?
Yes.
Or actually, I need a motion to accept the agenda. I apologize.
Motion to accept? So moved.
And-
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. And roll call for the motion to accept the agenda is Burke,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Corcoran,
Yes.
Evansteiner,
Yes.
Fong, Hedrick,
Yes.
double check, Peel, Martin, McDermott, Park, Semlanska,
Yes.
Shuffler,
Yes.
Valdez,
Here.
Voss,
Yes.
Wiseman. Your mic
Yes.
muted. Wise. And yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Are there any public comments today? Anyone from the public here want to speak?
There's no scheduled public speakers. Is there anyone on Zoom that wish to make a public comment? Please raise your virtual Zoom hand. Anyone in the room wish to make a public comment? No public comments.
Our first on business is to approve the minutes from our meeting on November 19th. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes, please.
So moved.
Second? Second. Got it.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Roll call, we have Burke,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Corcoran,
Yes.
Evansteiner,
Yes.
Fong,
Aye.
Hedrick,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Semlanska,
Yes.
Shuffler,
Yes.
Valdez,
Yes.
Voss,
Yes.
Wiseman. Your mic's muted, Wiseman.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes. That passes. Now in minutes for our December 16th meeting. Looking for a motion to approve those, please.
So moved.
Second, Sheffer, let's go.
motion was granted, motion to accept the December 16th, 2025, minutes is for roll call Burke,
Abstain?
Caldwell,
Yes.
Corcoran,
Yes.
Evansteiner,
Yes.
Fong,
Aye.
Hedrick,
Yes.
Martin,
Abstain?
Semlanska,
Yes.
Shuffler,
Yes.
Valdez,
Yes.
Voss,
Yes.
Wiseman,
Yes.
and Young.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to go to the Brown Act refresher. Once a year, we ask our attorneys to make a presentation to the Brown Act. Obviously, it's important as we want to make sure that everything we do is done in public, but there's a lot of nuances to complying with the Brown Act. So we're lucky to have Jeremy with us tonight to give us that refresher. Jeremy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. This is going to be a very similar presentation to one I gave last year and during the summer. So it'll be a lot of review. So I'm hoping to get through it relatively quickly and respect everyone's time. I see it's a little bit of a packed agenda tonight. So let's get started.
Nice and loud, Jeremy, if you would, please.
Okay, yeah. So what we're going to cover today is going to be the history of the Brown Act, basic purpose, some applications, how to avoid serial meetings, some of the rules governing meetings themselves, examples of exceptions, teleconferencing requirements, remedies and curing violations of the Brown Act, and some recent changes made by legislation that went into effect January 1st of this year. In terms of history, you've probably heard this before, but back in the early 1950s, San Francisco Chronicle reporter Mike Harris, did an expose looking into the way local agencies conducted meetings. State law at that time required that business, needed to be done in public, but Mr. Harris discovered that numerous secret meetings were very common. He wrote a 10-part series that ran in May and June of 1952. And then out of that series came for a push for new open meeting laws. Assemblymember Ralph M. Brown was the one that carried the legislation, and the Brown Act was enacted in 1967 to ensure that the public had access to their elected officials or appointed officials and had an opportunity to hear business being conducted at a public meeting. So the Brown Act's example of the Sunshine Law, these are laws that ensure public access to government functions. The Brown Act works in conjunction with the California Public Records Act to promote transparency in local government. So the Public Records Act, ensures that the public has access to local government documents, and then the Brown Act carries the role of ensuring that local government business is conducted at open and public meetings with some minor exceptions. So the purpose. So the purpose basically is to make sure that the decision-making process of a legislative body, of a public agency, are conducted in the public and that the public has an opportunity to comment on that. Essentially, it's just a principle of good government that the public has access to their elected officials and has a say in what's going on with their local government. So in terms of application, so the Brown Act applies to local agencies, specifically legislative bodies, and it applies to the meetings of legislative bodies. It can also apply to people that are elected to legislative bodies even prior to assuming office, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail on the basic definitions here. So a local agency means a county, city, general law or chartered, city, county, town, school district, any sort of special district, municipal corporation, political subdivision, commission, or other public agency. It basically applies to almost every single public agency. And then in terms of the legislative body, it's defined as the governing body of the public agency, as well as any boards, commissions, committees created by formal action of the governing body. And in certain limited circumstances, even private organizations can be subject to the Brown Act, but that doesn't come up a lot. So, essentially the key to the Brown Act is that all meetings need to be open and available to the public, except when an exception is outlined by statute. And the Brown Act is included in Government Code sections 54,950 and 54,963. So the definition of a meeting. So what's a meeting? Well, a meeting is any gathering of a majority of the members of the legislative body at the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate upon any matter within their jurisdiction. So for the Airport Commission, essentially it's airport matters. So if a majority of the Airport Commission gathers to discuss airport business, then that can create a meeting under the Brown Act and would require noticing or potentially lead to a violation of the Brown Act if it wasn't noticed. So the most important thing to remember is that, no action needs to be taken for a meeting to occur. Just talking between the members of a legislative body about issues, that involve the board or the legislative body, that's just enough. Example, your council meetings, commission meetings, and then even state of the city addresses can also be considered a meeting of a legislative body. So, it's essentially is just avoiding conversations between a majority of the body to avoid potentially having a meeting under the Brown Act that hasn't been properly noticed. So what's not a meeting? Not a meeting is an individual contacts. Your electeds, appointed officials are allowed to, reach out to their constituents and have one-on-one conversations. Conferences and seminars can also be exempt from the definition of a meeting, but that can get a little complicated depending upon what the conference and seminar is about. Maybe an airport conference could potentially be considered a meeting if a majority of the Airport Commission was attending and discussing airport matters. Similar sort of thought with community meetings. So exactly you're allowed to meet with your constituents, but we got to ensure that a majority of the legislative body isn't at the same community meeting and discussing agency business, and also purely social or ceremonial occasions. Someone getting sworn in really has, nothing to do with the airport, but, maybe it's a public official, you could potentially have the Airport Commission there. That can get complicated. There's a string of attorney general decisions talking about when the line gets crossed with regards to these social or ceremonial occasions. Attendance at standing committee meetings. So, basically, depending on how they're created and everything like that, you could potentially have committee meetings that are not subject to the Brown Act. It's your pure ad hoc meeting or any sort of meeting that does not include a majority of the legislative body. Meetings with other legislative bodies. So, a majority of the governing body can attend as long as they don't discuss among themselves issues related to the agency. So if there's, some sort of event, I think in terms of Palm Springs, there might be an opportunity to attend a meeting of another commission. So, you could have a majority of the Airport Commission attend as long as, there's no discussions, in the crowd, basically. So serial meetings are one of the biggest risks with Brown Act violations. They're expressly prohibited by the statute. So it's defined as the use of direct communication, personal intermediaries, or technological devices employed by a majority of the legislative body members in order to discuss or develop a collective concurrence for an action to be taken. Essentially it's just meeting prior to the actual notice meeting to discuss a matter or maybe, figure out how everyone's going to vote. That's specifically prohibited by the Brown Act. So here's a few ways how a serial meeting can happen. Personal meetings between a majority of the legislative body. It can happen via telephone, email, written letters, use of intermediaries. We'll go into a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides, and also social media sites. So your Facebook and Twitter, you can potentially create a serial meeting by just commenting on another legislative body member's post, and if that can create a significant issue. So elements of a serial meeting. So it's a series of communications, and it starts with less than a quorum, but then as it proceeds, involves a majority of the legislative body. And, there needs to be some sort of discussion or deliberation or a decision on a matter. So you know, basically, you know, you're discussing a matter in advance, you're coming to some sort of agreement between the legislative body members, and maybe you're deciding how you're ultimately going to vote on an issue. That's, you know, specifically something to be avoided under the Brown Act. So typically there are two types of serial meetings. There's the daisy chain type. So it's you know, member A speaks to member B, who then speaks with member C, who then speaks with member D about a particular matter. And, you know, in the process, they, you know, form some sort of concurrence on the issue. So basically, you know, you talk to A, talk to B, talk to C, talk to D, and eventually you have a majority of the board has talked about this issue outside of a notice Brown Act meeting. And then there's also the hub and spoke type. So this is an intermediary acts as a hub with the wheel as the hub of a wheel with members relaying information. So basically, all this conversation goes through one person who then coordinates and discusses with each member of the legislative body separately. So, you know, you talk to, let's say, you know, a member of staff who then talks to another commissioner who then talks to another commissioner, and then eventually you get some sort of decision or collective discussion about a matter that's outside of a Brown Act meeting. So we want to avoid that and just take care. So while you know, the Brown Act does prohibit serial meetings, it, you know, does provide, as I mentioned earlier, an exception for one-on-one communications. You know, by a non-member, i.e. staff or members of the legislative body. Again, just want to be careful that that's not transitioning into a hub and spoke type serial meeting. You know, it doesn't allow back and forth sharing of views of different members. The Brown Act also specifically allows for the majority of a board to, you know, have communications to discuss scheduling. So it's usually whether or not to call a special meeting. And again, social ceremonial conferences can also fall outside of this prohibition, but got to be careful with that. So social media is a big hot button issue, and there's been some more recent legislation to kind of tackle this to make sure that there aren't Brown Act violations occurring. So, you know, a meeting doesn't have to be a physical meeting. You know, discussing matters within the, you know, airport commission's jurisdiction on social media could potentially turn into a meeting. So you can comment on each other's posts, you know, about airport matters, and that can lead to a Brown Act violation. And, you know, it's important to remember too that this also, you know, if you're wishing someone happy birthday, that's not going to be an issue. But, you know, if you're wishing someone happy birthday and, you know, then you start talking about like something that's facing the airport on social media, that could potentially lead to an issue. In terms of avoiding serial meetings and email, refrain from replying all in emails. Usually when communications are sent out to the commission as a whole, you know, we usually BCC everyone. That's the best practice. But, you know, if you see something coming out, really refrain from replying all in emails. You know, don't take a position or, you know, make a commitment to vote a certain way. You know, that could potentially taint the process and maybe not necessarily come up in the airport commission context, but for something like a planning commission, that could be a very significant issue in terms of ensuring that public hearings are carried out fairly. In terms of, you know, communicating with each other, like, you know, maybe someone got a public comment or something like that, you could potentially email each other to just ask for info only, but have no further discussion about that. It's more common practice to ask a clerk or something like that to forward over, let's say, a public comment just to avoid the serial meeting issue. And again, just be careful, think about it before, you know, you hit reply to an email or hit reply to a social media comment and everything. So again, for social media tips, you don't make a commitment to necessarily vote a certain way. You know, if you're posting something that involves the airport commission, you know, keep it general and upcoming matters. You know, maybe at the most say, hey, this is going to be potentially on an agenda in an upcoming meeting. don't enter a commissioner group chat. You'd be surprised. I know it's nice to have a group chat of a bunch of like-minded individuals, but we really want to avoid a serial meeting issue. So I highly recommend not having a commission group chat. And I hope there isn't one. And remember that you could potentially have a serial meeting by just posting, liking, sharing, and commenting on another board member's social media posts. So again, be really cautious about taking a position or contributing content that expresses your position. That's more for public hearings, which not necessarily would apply to the airport commission, but just something to keep in mind. So the tips to avoid a serial meeting, always do more listening than talking. If you need to talk to each other, kind of lay out ground rules before meetings. And most importantly, don't ask staff or don't ask staff or in public how other members intend to vote. Just be careful, think about what you're saying before you do it. So remember that the general rule for serial meetings is you can't do outside a meeting what you should do in a meeting. Avoid the daisy chain, avoid the hub and spoke, make sure that, if you're doing a one-on-one communication, it stays one-on-one. So for the rules governing meetings, we'll break this down into a few topics. So the what's called a regular meeting, a special meeting, an emergency meeting, an adjourned meeting, and the public's right to comment. For regular meetings, there's a set of requirements before those can be held and noticed. So the agenda has to be posted 72 hours prior to the meeting, has to include the time and location of the meeting, and each item to be discussed or addressed has to have a brief general description, and that includes closed session items. And then notices need to also be available in alternative ADA formats and distributed in advance to those who request copies. Our city clerk's office, and then our airport commission clerk does a good job of making sure that those requirements are met. So in terms of ADA requirements, so basically, no public meeting shall be inaccessible to someone who has some sort of disability or need. It's California law, it's federal law that all public meetings, shall meet the protection and prohibitions contained in Section 202 of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And then the agenda for the meeting, in recognition of that, includes information on how to request a disability-related modification, who they need to send that request to, and include some basic information about auxiliary aids or services that may be made to a person with a disability who requires a modification or accommodation in order to participate in the public meeting. That's already included on our notices that go out. It's in your agenda packet, as part of the boilerplate, so no issues there. For bilingual public speakers, just wanted to point this out, that, if someone needs translation, you give them, extra time to accommodate the need for translation. So it's usually double the time during public comment. It's enough time so they can provide, their comment or statement in their native language and have it translated. So, if you have a 3-minute public comment, should provide 6 minutes of someone who needs translation services to help out. And usually, hopefully, that's dealt with ahead of time, but sometimes it comes up at the meeting and we deal with it then. So for special meetings, agenda requirements, so special meetings have, it's not as strict. Basically, the timing is that the agenda has to be posted no later than 24 hours prior to the meeting, has to include, the time and location of the meeting, and needs to contain a brief general description of, the items to be discussed, including if there's any closed session items. For adjourned meetings, usually this comes up if a meeting is going late. So, your midnight meeting or your meeting that goes till 1 a.m. Knock on wood, I hope that doesn't happen with the airport commission. But if it does, there's procedures in place basically to adjourn the meeting to a new time. So usually, it'll be the next morning. And if the meeting's adjourned because it's, going super late and, people need to get home, if it's adjourned to like the next day, you don't need to post a new agenda, so long as, the time and place in the order of adjournment is less than 5 days, and as long as there's no additional business to be discussed. But hopefully that won't necessarily come up here, especially since we moved to 4 p.m. now. In terms of emergency meetings, so emergency meetings can be hosted. It requires a severe impairment to public health and safety. Absent, what's defined in the statute as a dire emergency, at least 1 hour prior to the meeting, you need to reach out to the media organizations via telephone to let them know that an emergency meeting is happening. If there is a dire emergency, think of, imminent safety issues that need to be discussed immediately. The notice is given basically when the legislative body members are notified to attend. And if you want to have a closed session during an emergency meetings, that requires a 2/3 vote of the legislative body before doing so. In terms of, distributing the agenda packet to the public, so in addition to posting the agenda as required for Brown Act meetings, local agency must also make the agenda packet available to the public when the materials are distributed to the legislative body. So either all or majority of them, whichever comes first. Basically, if it's sent to the legislative body, it has to be made available. And so basically, and that includes your agenda packet. And you may have noticed, sometimes the agenda packet is updated earlier on in the week before a meeting. That's to make sure that this requirement is being met. In terms of website requirements, so agencies, that have a website must either post a link on the homepage that pulls up the agenda directly, or post a link that takes the user to another web page containing the agenda. Not necessarily, an issue for the Airport Commission. That's all handled by, IT and city staff, but just something to remember. So the location of the meeting and field trips. So generally, the location of the meetings have to be within the agency's jurisdictional boundaries, in this case, the city of Palm Springs. There are some sort limited exceptions. So, but the meeting still has to be open to the public and notice. There might be a situation where a meeting needs to be held in a different location to comply with state and federal law. There might be a need to attend some sort of administrative proceeding. In some cases, it's to inspect real property. Maybe there's a purchase or some sort of code enforcement type issue that might necessitate going outside. And then also participating in multi-agency meetings. So as long as it's held within the territory of one of the agencies. So, there's a meeting with multiple agencies, you can attend a meeting as long as it's in the boundaries of one of those. Pretty straightforward. So there's also, some additional exceptions here. So you can meet a nearby facility if the agency actually doesn't have a facility within the jurisdiction. Don't see that one come up too often. You could have a meeting to meet with federal or state officials to discuss issues affecting the agency. So that you might have to go to a federal building or a state building to hold those meetings. Meet with legal counsel for pending litigation closed sessions if doing so reduces legal costs. And then, if there's some sort of building issue because of an emergency, flood, fire, earthquake, you can designate another meeting place to hold a meeting safely. In terms of the other rules governing meetings, so the public's right to comment. So at every regular meeting, members of the public have the right to directly address the legislative body on any item of the public interest if that item is under jurisdiction of the body. So, members of the public can make comments about airport matters at the Airport Commission meeting. In terms of agenda items, the public must be given an opportunity to comment before or during the body's consideration of the item. And then at special and emergency meetings, members of the public have the right to address the body about any item that's listed on the agenda. So it's in special emergency meetings, it's just limited to what's on the agenda. You don't necessarily have a general public comment period. Willful interruptions. So, basically, public agencies were seeing a lot more interruptions, and this kind of stems from the COVID era rules with Zoom bombings and all that stuff where, you'd have a member of the public kind of crash the meeting and create a disruption. So, if a member of public is disruptive, the governing body has to at least give them a warning first that their behavior is disruptive. And, if they fail to stop, it will result in their removal. And SB 1100, includes a definition of what disruptive behavior actually is. So it has to actually disrupt, disturb, impede, or render infeasible the orderly conduct of the meeting. So it includes, behavior that, violates one of the governing body's regulations, addressing the conduct of a meeting. So the violation of a code of conduct, or a reasonable observer would perceive as a threat to use force by that member of the public. Essentially what this boils down to is, there's certain behavior that that a public agency has to tolerate. But if it crosses a line, and sometimes it can be very difficult to understand, to weigh on when that line is crossed, you first have to give a warning, and then if they keep continuing that behavior, then you can remove them from the meeting. But it actually has to be a disruption. A disruption isn't if a member of the public is giving a heated public comment, if they're particularly negative on a project. That doesn't necessarily rise to the level of an actual disruption. So it's just something to be careful about. In terms of actually dealing with them, it requires very careful meeting management. You want to avoid fanning the flames or going back and forth. Usually that's what they want, is they want some sort of reaction and to engage in a prolonged debate. Usually if things are getting heated, what we recommend is using a recess, to kind of lower the temperature in the room. So taking a 10 to 15-minute recess can actually do wonders with dealing with this sort of thing. In terms of public recording a meeting, so members of the public have a right to record audio or videotape a meeting unless the agency makes a reasonable finding that the recording would constitute a persistent disruption of the proceedings. So a member of the public can get in here and record with their phone. If they're just sitting there recording with their phone, that's completely fine. If they're getting in with a crazy lens that's making tons of noise and everything like that, so that you actually can't hear each other, maybe that would rise to the level of, okay, requiring that person to put that away. But generally, they can bring it in their phone and record as long as they're not being disruptive. And then also, if the public agency records the meeting themselves, those recordings of the meeting are public records, which makes sense. And then also, there should be no action or discussion for any item not listed on the agenda, except for, if there's an emergency situation, there's a specific Brown Act procedure to add items in by a majority vote. Don't necessarily see that often. Consideration of items continued to another meeting within 5 calendar days. Basically discussion to request an item to be added in for consideration at a future meeting, and then also brief announcements or reports on the members or staff's own activities. So that's your board report, usually at the beginning or the end of the meeting. Teleconferencing. So teleconferencing is available for any meeting of the legislative body. There's some requirements so that all votes need to be by roll call. Agendas need to be posted at the teleconference locations, and the teleconference locations need to be identified on the agenda. This is the traditional Brown Act teleconferencing requirements. This has been in effect for a while. The most important thing is that the teleconference locations must be accessible to the public. So if you put your home address on the agenda, if member of the public shows up and they want to participate in the meeting from that address, they have to be able to do so. And then this one comes up sometimes, but at least a quorum has to be within the boundaries of the local agency. Just had a situation a few weeks back where we ended up not having quorum because there was one person that was going to make up our quorum that was actually teleconferencing from another state. So we ended up not having quorum for that meeting, despite having a majority of the board there. It comes up, but just to be mindful if you're putting in your teleconference request, that we kind of need to make sure that at least everyone's participating within the city's jurisdiction. So for Brown Act's teleconferencing, so what I just discussed was the classic rule. There was recent legislation, SB 707, that went into effect January 1st of this year. In terms of teleconferencing, there's some new avenues there, but most importantly, SB 707 recodified some of the more relaxed teleconferencing rules that were in AB 2449. That's the just cause emergency circumstances, if some of your member agencies are familiar with that. As of this point, the city council has voted on a policy that allows only traditional Brown Act teleconferencing. And basically, those relaxed teleconferencing rules aren't available until there's a different action taken by the city council. So for now, everything will remain under the classic rule. But if that changes, we'll inform the commission. So the classic rule still applicable to what I discussed. You give your location on the agenda, post the agenda at the location site, allow public access to the site, and you're able to take a roll call vote. You have to take a roll call vote. You don't actually have to have video on, and you don't necessarily have to allow the public to teleconference in, but they have to be able to participate in public comment at that location. So you have to have an ability to allow them to comment. Usually we don't necessarily have a ton of participants at these locations unless it's like another agency, City Hall or something like that for a multi-regional agency. So usually it's not that big of an issue. One thing that SB 707 did do is that it clarified that teleconferencing is allowed as a reasonable accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act. There's a couple of requirements there that the member has to have participate with audio and video technology. Basically, they have to have their mic and camera on, unless there's some sort of physical condition that related to their disability that prevents that. And then before any action is taken, the member has to disclose whether anyone 18 or older is in the room with them and the general nature of the relationship to that person. I think it's the requirements, to be honest, is a little bit weird, but I think it's to prevent necessarily someone, influencing or giving some sort of guidance to the legislative body member off screen and not in public. Don't necessarily have an issue with that, but it's a little bit of a weird requirement. But this teleconferencing as a reasonable accommodation is treated like in-person participation, including for quorum purposes, and the other teleconferencing requirements under the Brown Act do not apply. So remedies and cure. So basically, a Brown Act violation, can be prosecuted by the district attorney and also can be initiated by any interested person. But there are some exceptions there. So, violations of the Brown Act, you can't invalidate board action, that involve, this laundry list. So if there's substantial compliance with the Brown Act, an action can't be invalidated. If there's an action involving the sale or issuance of notes, bonds, and related contracts or agreements, those can't be invalidated. If there's a creating of a contractual obligation, including a contract awarded by competitive bid, and the other parties relied on, in good faith on that, you can't necessarily, invalidate that action. There might be another way of that action getting challenged, potentially with a conflict of interest, but just purely under the Brown Act, that won't apply. If there's anything with the collection of any tax, and then also if the complaining party had actual notice of the action, at least 72 hours basically within the posting requirements for the Brown Act for a regular meeting or the requirement for a special meeting, the action can still be taken. So if they've shown that they were notified and, they had the opportunity to come to the public meeting, those actions are not necessarily going to be invalidated. So there's certain procedures that need to be followed. So, basically what will happen first is that the city or the clerk will receive a cease and desist letter that outlines, the Brown Act violation. And there's a 9-month statute of limitations on that. Once the legislative body receives that letter, they have 30 days to respond to it. Um, you know, you could also potentially respond after that 30-day period, but then you open up the door for the plaintiff's attorney to get their fees and costs covered. So, it's highly recommended to, respond within that 30-day period just to avoid that. Um, Basically, the way that a Brown Act cure works is that when you receive that cease and desist letter alleging the violation, depending on the circumstances, most commonly what we do is we put the alleged item back on the agenda for discussion at the next meeting. And then you include, you make sure that the notice is properly posted. You make sure that, everything is fine from a Brown Act perspective. And then, you release a statement basically during that meeting that we're not going to proceed. We're going to stop the violating behavior. So, most circumstances when you receive one of these letters, it mostly results in just putting it on agenda again and going back, and that'll cure it and that'll solve the issue. But, if there's any reason to challenge it, there's a risk of attorney's fees being awarded to the person filing the letter. Recent changes, I mentioned SB 707 that went into effect earlier this year. Basically, it outlined a number of more stringent requirements on eligible legislative bodies. The Airport Commission isn't an eligible legislative body for the purposes of SB 707. So a lot of the more onerous requirements of SB 707 just don't apply to the Airport Commission. But there are a few minor things that I just wanted to point out. So, the Brown Act outlines like certain social media restrictions that, went into, your ability to reply and on another board member's social media. Those originally had sunset provisions, so they would have expired, but they've removed that. So they're just permanently in effect now. Providing copies of the Brown Act, and you'll get an email soon up. So basically, the public agency has to ensure that copies of the Brown Act are provided to all legislative body members. We'll be sending those out soon enough. We have a nice PDF copy that we'll send out to you guys to ensure compliance with that part. There can't be any special meetings on, the legislative body's salary or benefits. So, salary and benefits need to be in the regular meeting. You can't have a special meeting on a different day to consider, potentially a significant expense on the agency's parts. And that is more built in on existing provision for, executives. So you can't have like a director's compensation on a special meeting. There's been specific language included regarding removing disruptive virtual attendees. It outlines a procedure and everything. It's very similar to SB 1100. And there's a lot of other minor updates and rewording and clarifications that just kind of clean up the law a little bit. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Jeremy and the activity.
It's a lot. I get it.
You were good. You cranked through it. I appreciate that. Any questions?
Do we have any questions from the public?
I have some questions.
Oh.
So case study in our town in the last month. The Art Commission made a decision on the Bogart statue, and that decision was rescinded because of a violation of the Brown Act. Can you tell us or just give us any insights on how that happened? Because we're a commission similar to them. And what did we learn from that? Or is there a processing you can share with us so we better understand how a commission like ours makes a decision or a recommendation that's then rescinded because of the Brown Act?
Well, I guess I'm not necessarily familiar with the specifics behind that, but was it potentially an agenda issue? Was it an issue with you know, was an item that was discussed that wasn't on an agenda? Do we know that?
Want to talk about it?
I see Scott in the room, so yeah.
Go for it, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting. All these Brown Act things can really come into play and you don't really even think about it. So I've been doing this a long time. You've heard it once. I've been through this presentation about 30 times. But you can still make mistakes.
Yeah.
Just as our city council did the other day. And in that case, we have pretty strict rules with the city council about how things can go on the agenda. So a council member can't just surprise everybody else and say, I want this on the agenda in 2 weeks. They have to ask the council to agendize something. And then a majority of those council members have to agree to put it on the agenda. But they can't really talk about it then. All they can do is vote to put it on the agenda. Because theoretically, the public didn't know this was either going to be brought up. So it was appropriately brought up and it was agendized to be, or it was asked to be brought up. And then the conversation was, they don't want it on the agenda, which is within their rights. But then they started talking about sending it to the art commission. And that's where it got a little wonky. And, you know, people get talking about it and, you know, as, you know, we reflected back on it with the city attorney, it was kind of like, yeah, we probably didn't really do this quite the right way. And, you know, the city attorney and I talked about it too. And, you know, you get talking about some stuff and you say, time out, wait a minute. We're kind of strained from what we're doing now in terms of the airport commission here. I don't know exactly if you have formal rules for how items get on the agenda like city council does, but that's kind of maybe kind of gives you a little background on how it can happen.
That's helpful because at times when one of the commissioners, one of us mention a topic that's not on the agenda, Jeremy will jump in and say, timeout, can't be discussed. But just to build on that question, Jeremy, in our process here, when we ask to accept the agenda, I'll ask if there's any changes. And that's just in that context, it's only to remove things. I can't propose to add something on at that point. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Unless there's, you know, some sort of emergency or something like that. But I think in the case of, you know, the airport commission being an advisory commission that you don't necessarily take final action on, I don't see it, you know, a situation where that would occur. So it's mostly just to remove items from the agenda.
Okay. Any other questions about this? Going once, going twice? Okay, Jeremy, thank you for presenting. Thank you for your time. Appreciate that. And thanks, Scott, for your clarification on that.
Here, we
Okay.
just need to announce for this public as well. So do we have anybody in the room from the public that wishes to make a public comment? Anyone on Zoom, please raise your virtual Zoom hand. No public comments.
All right, let's go to 7B, which is the Airport Program Management Advisory Consulting Services proposal and contract. Just here you present this and people up on kind of where we were last month that we got introduced to a winner and then this process started again. So give us the context of this along with the decision.
Mr. Chairman. So this item is to recommend a contract in the amount of not to exceed $6 million for Airport Program Management Advisory Consulting Services to Accenture. And they're here to speak today, but just to give the commission a little bit of background. So late spring last year, we issued an RFP for program management services, which was ultimately a recommendation to award to the Pasley Group. We started down the pathway of getting the contract language in place and making sure that they had all of their requirements. And we got to the city council, the point of city council, and then realized right before city council that there may have been a process error in the RFP process. And so as a precautionary measure, we took that back and decided to rerun the entire process just to make sure we were following everything we needed to. And as a result of that, we ended up selecting Accenture, not because of any change in the process. Well, it was because of a change in the process, but the Pasley Group actually was deemed non-responsive in the second round, just based on some technicalities in their proposals. However, we do think that the Accenture team will work very well with us. They stood out to all the panelists and Catherine and Michelle are here to talk about what they do and how they do it. And we can take any questions after that.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you very much for having us here this afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to address you all. I'm Catherine Cronin. I'm the Managing Director of the Airports team in the Accenture Infrastructure and Capital Projects Group. It's quite a mouthful. I did bring with me today Michelle Brantley, who is the proposed program project manager, so that you would get to know her as well. Michelle, until I swiped her, had spent 5 years in Ontario as the Chief Development Officer. So she's very familiar with the Southern California aspect of things. And prior to that, she spent 2 decades in Seattle working for SeaTac. She just got her voice back after screaming all weekend. The last meeting I had with her, she couldn't speak. For screaming for the Seahawks. So, I knew that was not gonna be that was beyond my capabilities. Oh, but it's not just me. There we go. So to not bore you too much with the overall history, the group of people that you'll be working with previously may have been known to you as Answer Advisory. Answer has done quite a bit of work in this area, has worked for the city of Palm Springs before. Answer and a number of other firms were bought by Accenture a few years ago when everybody wanted to get into the infrastructure game. And then they formed what is called the Infrastructure and Capital Projects LLC underneath the big Accenture umbrella. I make that point because Accenture as a company is over 800,000 people. It's pretty broad. We can leverage that when we need those kind of skills and expertise, but because we're in an LLC, we can also not have to leverage that if we choose that it's better for our individual clients, such as our airports, to operate separately. So the airports team specifically, who will be working with you, has over 20 years of experience doing this type of work at airports across the United States. We specialize in providing not just the strategy and program management, but also financial services. So, you know, our team is led by aviation veterans. Many of us have been owners, but many of us have also been contractors and designers, which we think really helps us have a whole 360 view when we're going into this work. And we really, really believe that in order to help clients' visions become a reality, you have to tie the funding with the delivery, right? Because if you can't fund it, you can't build it. So that's why we make sure we have a lot of finance and funding experts on our teams as well. So across the country, in the last 20 years, we've done 25 and more small, medium, and large airports. 5 to 6 of them have been in Southern California. They've had varied capital improvement program values. Some of them are tens of millions, some of them are billions. One of the things, and everybody does say it, you see one airport, you see one airport, but every airport is unique because you're made up of different stakeholders, both internally and externally, and your community that you are in really drives what's important at the airport. And I think we make sure that our teams are very, very focused on what matters to the particular airport that they're working at. We do try to put a very lean team on, and you'll see the same happen here. We do get, you know, Palm Springs Airport's iconic. It really is. You got the Wexler terminal. It's an outdoor terminal. There's a lot of very unique things here. And I don't think I've seen as much community involvement in what happens to your public infrastructure as happens here in Palm Springs. So we're very attuned to that as well. And we do provide end-to-end capital project services, which is exactly what you guys asked for in this RFP. Next. So our approach to this is simultaneously strategic and tactical. So we're focused on 6 key areas for helping you with your capital program: assessing the organizational readiness of the agency and what would need to happen for any kind of change management that you actually need to have happen and how you execute things, what your current governance and controls are, and what would be needed for some of the programs of the size that you're talking about. Developing very clear program definitions and making sure we're aligning what's currently in the CIP with what's in the master plan and what's in the strategic vision so that we have one program. It's very important. And having those definitions defined up front helps to make sure you don't have scope creep and that everybody, all of your stakeholders know from day one, what are you doing, why are you doing it, and what are they going to get at the end? Because it's shocking how many times you start on a program and at the end the stakeholder says, not what I asked for. And when you're dealing with multiple different airlines, building that consensus is an extremely important part of it. Also simultaneously looking at what are your funding needs, what sources do you have, what's the timing, because that's very important also, of the available sources, and helping to develop a funding plan for you to make your program reality. Also defining through that organizational readiness, what is the delivery structure you need both internally and with the composite of consultants that you're going to have supporting you and contractors. And then developing the actual delivery plan, which says the details of the schedule. Is it going to be design build, design bid build, CMAR, construction manager at risk? How do you want to do each of the different projects based on what the benefits that you'll get out of them? And then finally, once you do all of that, that results in the ability to do program oversight and execution in a way that will make sure that you hit all your goals. So how do we begin? So in the first 120 days, we have a 4-month plan that focuses on listening and learning, because to the point, every airport's different. And so working with Harry and his team and understanding what works, what doesn't work, what's important, what some of the major areas are, understanding your stakeholders, your airlines. And the unique thing in that is United in Palm Springs is not United in New Jersey and is not United in Chicago. So you really do have to get to know the station managers at all the different airports. Gathering other information, understanding everything that's been done to date and how it's been updated, and then linking that to what has to happen. So where are the gaps, making sure we understand funding gaps, staffing gaps, competency gaps, and then launching the initial aspects of the program, which include the program risk assessment, doing a governance plan, agreeing on the controls framework, because just agreeing on what kind of project controls, how it's going to go up through the authorities to get approvals, what dollar values need whose approval, what time frame it gets done in, drafting an execution plan. And at the end of 120 days, we'll have a detailed program management plan that is a living document that we refer to throughout the life of our assignment, and will define how you communicate with who, what stakeholders get involved in what decisions, how we're going to execute a program, and how we're going to do delivery and oversight. So that is it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Catherine. And so just to kind of put a pin in this, you know, when we were looking for a team to come to the table and partner with us, we're not just looking for staff augmentation, but a group and a team that really had done this before, understanding that we have such a large capital program and so many complex issues. We really wanted people who understood what it was like to manage those issues day in and day out. So I think Catherine and Michelle will do an excellent job at that. They've been in the trenches before, they get it. But with that, opening it up to questions from the commission.
First, I want to thank you for including everything and the contract and the proposal, et cetera. That was very much appreciated. And I read everything. Going through financing, you have a preference for do you have an inclination to steer an airport toward a certain type of financing, i.e. do you find P3s better than doing?
So I used to joke, I do come from the Northeast, hence my very fast cadence. I apologize for that. Try to slow it down. When I was at the Port Authority, we looked a lot at different triple Ps, and I always joked that I was going to retire making a model that spit out the answer. It completely depends on what are you being driven by, right? If you have to have an asset, but there is no way you're getting funding anywhere else, you may choose to go triple P and give up your long stream revenue, right? So, you know, we did it with some of our terminals. We did it with a parking garage / consolidated car rental. You give up some of your long-term CFCs in that. And so you have to make a decision, is it worth the financial trade-off? Also, the other way we look at it is what's driving you? Are you being driven by schedule? Are you being driven by cost? Are you being driven by political desires or political timing to get something done? And that helps inform which model you want to go for, right? Even when it's not triple P financing, if you're talking about design bid build, or there's design finance bill, which is not truly a full triple P, where you can get some upfront money, but then you put in some money too, so you're not giving away all the revenue. You really have to look at, is it schedule driven, or is it, because negotiating a triple P will suck your time in the short term, for sure. I will say you also have to be very careful with triple Ps, because I think they're great. I've used them, but ultimately you're still the airport. And when something goes wrong, even if it's done under a triple P, it's still your fault. Nobody was calling Vantage to complain about walking down the QBE during the LaGuardia construction. Port Authority's phones were ringing mighty heavily. So you have to appreciate that it's not a total risk transfer. You don't get to just give it all away. But if you know what the risks are up front and you really need that cash inflow, then you create a plan to manage those risks and understand what you're going to have to deal with throughout the execution of it. But I don't know if that was too long-winded.
No, it was perfect. It's helpful. And the second question is, how would you involve the commission or some representative commissioners in your process? Or would you?
Yeah, I think it's important to, stakeholders are a 360 degree of stakeholders, right? It's the people that are your peers. It's the people that maybe are working for you. It's the people that you're working for, and they all have an input. And what your desires and things that drive you are different than maybe what might drive somebody in the community member, and we have to include them all. So in the beginning, we come up with what's called a stakeholder communication plan, define everybody who should be included, define the cadence of meetings you want to have, what kind of media you want to use to disseminate information. If you're going to be sending out newsletters, if you're going to create a website for the program, and then if you're going to have meetings on a monthly basis to get input from people and make sure that everybody has something to say on that, is generally how we do it.
Thank you.
Other questions? Please.
Just a clarification question that's two-parter. One, how did we come up with 6 million? That's like 30,000 man hours. That's a lot of lifting. And then second, is that a operating expense or is that a capital expense?
So it's budgeted in our capital fund. And it will continue to be budgeted in our capital fund as long as the agreement goes forward. In terms of the $6 million cap, we really took an estimate of what we think we would need for the projects that we have over the next 3 years. And we applied it on an hourly basis based on position. So I think it was calculated at somewhere just over 1,000 hours per position. And then we asked Catherine and Michelle to provide us with a rate schedule for each of those positions.
And this is a task order base.
That's order based on
Give that.
Yeah.
We do.
So I'm interested in the process about use words like change management and controls management and governance process. What is the cadence between the work that you do and the work that staff do? For example, do you come back and say, we think these are the 7 things you need to do, and we're going to monitor them? Or is this between you and Harry and then the staff and the commission? How does all that work in terms of how you drive change management or control management or governance here?
So initially, it is very much listening and understanding what exists in the governance world and taking input from Harry and his team on who's involved in those different areas, seeing if the way the structure is currently set up is robust and nimble enough when you start to move from tens of millions of dollars to hundreds of millions of dollars to billions. Because how you approve and how you do that vastly changes. So the same thing happens with the controls. How you set up project controls versus how you set up a program's controls can be very, very different, because in project controls, usually you may have a $10,000 limit where somebody has to be told that you're issuing a change order. In a program, you may say, okay, it's going to be 100 million. You can move it between that project and that project and that project within the program. You can't move it out of the program, and you can't add to the program. So working with Harry to see what currently are, and the whole team, on what are the governances here? What are the governances within the commission? What are the governances within the city? And then looking at how they all work. And I don't know that I would come back and say, we would have recommendations, but I and Michelle particularly tend to work much more interactively to say, these are the things we're thinking about. How would this go with your team? What's a realistic time frame? Can we move that forward? And then what consensus building needs to happen with staff if we're changing how they do their job? And that's where the change management comes into play. And we're all, well, I'm an engineer. A lot of us in our industry are engineers, and dealing with people doesn't always naturally come the easiest, but I found that the thing that's going to break your project is if you don't have everybody on board with what you're doing. And they can only get on board with what you're doing if you work with them the whole way and make it part of their idea and understanding as well, and ask for their input. So to me, the change management is equally important as setting up the governance and telling Harry, this is what it is. I've never seen a governance structure work where you handed it to the CEO and he pushed it down. Right? So it's working with the people who are going to have to do the things differently and helping to understand why they might resist it, because maybe you don't know why they don't want to do that, and there's a way around it, and helping them understand why it would help.
So it's still advisory.
It's advisory, yeah. We're not gonna, I mean, we can set up KPIs if that's desired, to say, okay, we set up this governance, we set up these controls, we said we were gonna do this, and we'll measure it and report on it, because I think that's important to also have transparency.
So I was really happy to see that we're going to have the expertise around the financing of this project. So FAA has approved our forecast. We're going to double the number of claimants over 20 years. We're 3 million to 6. The initial feedback from our consultants were that we're going to have to look for 2.2 billion in the next 20 years. More than that, or sooner than that.
More than that.
Right? So in our last meeting, there was an interesting conversation about, do we have any way to finance this for this city of 49,000 people and an airport, whatever? You know, can we even afford to do any of this? So 2 questions. One is, in doing your due diligence in this application to apply for this or respond to this RFP, did you have a point of view about our ability to finance this? When you look at whatever public information you did around our plan and where we are right now. And the second question is, if we decide we can't afford to do it in the structure that we have now, an airport that's owned by a city of 49,000 people with whatever bonding power we have or don't have, does Accenture have the background to come back to us and say, you may need a different structure to pull this plan off? Because our forecast isn't going to change.
Yeah.
But our ability to raise the money is still in question here. Is that an expertise in area that you have?
Not me personally, but within my team, yes. And I would say, when we first looked at the plan and the funding, I understood the consideration of a triple P. Right? Like, as I said, sometimes you have to take money that you wouldn't otherwise take. It's a matter of structuring that in a way where you're not giving up your long-term revenue, because that's just going to further cause you into that spiral. So part of it is looking at what is practical in your funding and how to lay the program out and stage it. Because sometimes people say, okay, my consolidated car rental is $1 billion. Well, maybe you could do that in some phases where you're not laying out $1 billion all at once. So like one of the things our team did in Des Moines, they had a $580 million terminal expansion project that when they got ready to actually go look at it, it was 850 million. That was a problem. And so aside from also helping them with funding, went in and said, here's how you phase this to do it. Do these 3 gates first, do these next gates next. You're getting revenue from the airlines on those gates that you've already put in service. And then you can roll that additional revenue back into the funding for your next gates. And so they've actually just gone for their next extension of that program. Because they were able to build the first one within that dollar value phased differently. So that's a really important part of that. And looking at what do you really have to have? There are process and operational necessities to pump that many people through a terminal. And then there's customer service improvements that you want to have to pump that many people through the terminal. And some of those customer service things bring revenue, right? So giving some priority to retail that's going to come at you with a nice return might decide that that project's going in faster than a project that actually you might really want, but they're not going to have a return on an investment, right? So having us look at which ones are going to have a return on investment, how fast is that return going to happen? And if we give the one that would have had a higher priority, second priority, and take the money out of this one, then maybe we can do the second and the third one. So that's a lot of what we think is the early work to do here.
Well, I think it's more of a higher level discussion that Chairman Cochran was raising. We are a city of 48,000, whatever. And I guess we're getting close to being a bigger entity than the city itself. And whether it would make sense to look at having a different structure for the
An
airport.
authority.
An airport authority, something that where we have taxing authority throughout the entire valley, in that area.
We do have people who can help with that. I'm not it.
We're not advocating one way or another.
Yeah, it's just an
Commissioners
idea.
brought it up
Yeah.
last time. This idea of we're doing a lot of effort, a lot of work. We've been all over our communities here talking about our future, and our plan has been over 50 meetings, educating people on what we're thinking about. And then this question keeps popping up. Can we afford to do this? And in the structure that exists today, or even in the structure we have to run.
Well, and then working with Harry and your commercial team on what's your CPE, what can your CPE tolerate versus what the competition around you CPE is the other place to look at, how can you raise your CPE without reducing your traffic, right? Causing airlines to go to Ontario or other places that we don't want them to go.
How do we balance the demand that came out of the
Yeah.
research that's been approved by the FAA? And communicate to the airlines that maybe a higher CPE
Yeah.
is warranted in terms of the amount of business they can get here in the next 20 years.
Yes.
So last question, at least for me, 120 days. So after you onboard and you get the lay of the land, will we start having either insights or answers to some of these questions within 4 months?
The structure of the airport might take a little bit longer because I think there's a lot of information, but some of the other stuff, yes, I would say. And one of the other things that I think is really critical is you have a 2.2 capital plan billion capital plan to go with a forecast. Forecasted demand and actual demand sometimes don't necessarily follow the same line. So having a plan where there's plenty of different levers you can pull to accelerate or slow down based on what happens, because nobody predicted, there's I could get my number wrong, but I think there's generally over the course of 30 years, a 5-point-something% increase in traffic year over year. Some years that's been 12, and other years it's been 2, right? And so who can predict what'll happen next? So that's the other really important thing, is making sure that you can stop a project or accelerate a project when something comes to fruition. And one of the other things in Des Moines, which you may or may not care about, one of the other things we help them do was rearrange the phasing of the project based on the availability of funding. So all of a sudden, there was airfield funding that was coming and it was gonna go away. So the airfield wasn't necessarily the priority, but the airfield got built. Because then they could maximize that revenue. And none of us can predict what's happening with politics. So what kind of federal funding flows over the next 10 years, yet to be determined. Right?
Other questions? Welcome aboard.
Thank
Wait,
you.
I should disqualify. This goes to council now. for approval?
Goes to council. Still goes to council.
Is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to make a public comment? Please raise your virtual Zoom hand. Anyone in the room wish to make a public comment? Or just-
Vice Chair just reminded me we have to vote on this.
Yes, and that's what I'm
Susie has
saying.
to vote on this. Can I have a motion, please, to approve this going to city council?
So moved.
Second.
So to reiterate the motion, it is a motion to recommend to the city council the approval of a professional service agreement with Accenture Infrastructure and Capital Projects LLC for airport program management and advisory consulting services. So that was Hedrick and Foss. Thank you. So Commissioners Burke,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Corcoran,
Yes.
Evansteiner,
Yes.
Fong,
Aye.
Hedrick,
Yes.
Sam Lapska,
Yes.
Shuffler,
Yes.
Valdez,
Yes.
Voss,
Yes.
Wiseman?
Yeah.
Wiseman? Your mic muted?
Yes.
Yes. And yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Fingers crossed. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, 7C, the administration building acquisition, Victoria.
All right, good evening, commissioners. My name is Victoria Carpenter. I'm the Assistant Airport Director of Palm Springs Airport. We wanted to provide the commission with an update. This is a receive and file. There is a airport commission staff report that's included with your agenda packet this evening. It is related to the acquisition of the real property located at 550 Paseo Doretta in Palm Springs. This is for the airport administrative offices and some support on what our process is and what we're doing right now. So we're intending on relocating approximately 20 plus employees, which are currently occupied in the second floor, which is this floor that we're in right now of the airport terminal. And we are relocating our employees to this office building that's located less than a mile away from the airport. We are utilizing our broker CBRE to help us with this property acquisition. And as a reminder, on September 16, 2025, the Airport Commission recommended to utilize Measure D, which is an aviation fuel tax fund, about 1.3 million, and airport funds, about 400,000, for the acquisition of this property. We have been working with CBRE to open escrow. We've brought this before City Council in a closed session meeting, and we have executed a purchase and sale agreement with Paseo Doretta Management LLC for the property. Currently, we're in the due diligence phase where we are having an inspector go out and take a look at the building to make sure that there's no roof leaks or anything major that we need to discuss with the property owner. And we did complete an appraisal of the property. That appraisal came back at about 1.9. So what we've negotiated is about 1.7 to the company or to the property management group for the acquisition. So it's below the appraised value. We've done an analysis on different types of options, like constructing a new building. But one thing, we do have limited space on the airport, leasing office space, and then ownership, so acquiring the property. We've also evaluated other properties within a 4-mile radius, and we've determined that, even though that there is some availability of office space, this property is one of the best, properties, spaces for our building and one of the closest locations to the airport. As I mentioned, we're in a due diligence investigation, so we have 60 days that we are going through that process to understand the property more, which includes a physical inspection of the property, some environmental investigations, financial verifications, title review, building inspection, environmental assessments. Also with that is a review of the preliminary title report and any kind of licenses, permits, inspection reports, and HOA documents that we need to review. The property is going to be we are going to be vacating about 4,000 square feet of space here in the second floor. And we have considered some options for the space. In the packet also is included a PowerPoint presentation from Intervistas, one of our planning consultants, to identify some uses of the space. One of them being relocating the USO to a portion of this property or this space up here because of our future plans that the master plan calls for with that space over there at the USO. So that has been considered for the space, but also to generate revenue and make this area enhanced for passenger uses. So we've considered a passenger lounge, concessions, airline tenant offices, USO facilities, and other traveler and public amenities for this space up here. So we would have to do a bid for it and put that out to the public to see what kind of options we can get for this space here. Also, one thing that we've kind of vetted with staff and even some commissioners is, how is this compared to other airports? As mentioned earlier, when you see one airport, you see one airport. And that's common in the industry, but we do have other benchmarkings of other administrative offices. So we actually sent out a survey and we, got some feedback back, and either if they don't have an administrative office, they're going to be building, they're going to be relocating, purchasing land and a building, or even some other airports like San Diego International has an office about 0.4 miles away from the terminal. Kansas City about 0.7 miles away, Portland about a mile. So one of the big things is, also transportation, like how is our staff going to get to and from the new building to get to the airport. And we've discussed, one, they have the ability to use their own personal vehicle if they choose. They could use a bicycle, so that they can be sustainable. And then also purchase airport vehicles. So we're looking into purchasing additional Jeep Cherokees to help with transporting our staff back and forth. As I mentioned, we are going through escrow now, so hopefully we have that all wrapped up by Q2 of this calendar year, and we hope to have, we're going to be moving in stages to that building, and we hope to be completely moved in by the end of this year. We've also went through and completed an analysis of, what are our operational costs for this property, and we really just used our terminal as a baseline to see how much do we actually use now in our operations here in the terminal versus what is it going to be there. And there is some cost savings because we are going to be in a newer building. So we intend on taking this, fully to council for approval. And we did want to show you some of the photos of the location. They are also included in your packet, so if you want to review that. But we could just quickly go through the photos here. There's quite a few online as well, but we'll just go through them here. So this is the exterior view of the building there. And then I think the last one, We'll just go through these kind of quickly. The main entrance there. This will be the reception area, greeting passengers or customers, passengers. It's quite a large building, about 10,000 square feet. We will still keep this conference room. This will still be used for airport related matters, tenant matters. We do have quite a large space, which we also intend on using a portion of the building for our alternate EOC building. Lots of space inside of the offices there for cubicles, desks. Enough space to put our 20 staff members. Okay, that's it. Does anybody have any questions? Commissioner Henrik?
So two questions. Why did you choose Jeep Cherokees versus an electric vehicle?
We looked into the electric vehicles, and some of the vehicles that we looked into, we just thought that the Cherokee was better for staff, for space. We looked into some trucks, some electric vehicle trucks. Actually, we passed it around to staff. Everybody had a chance to provide some feedback on what they thought their uses would be for. And we ended up going with the Jeep Cherokee.
And
I will add to that. So the Cherokees are hybrid. And the reason we went that route is we actually make a lot of trips to LA, whether it's to meet with FAA or Customs and Border Protection, things like that. So that long range driving, at least for now, that was a factor as well.
okay. Well, your Mustangs will also make a round trip. I do a lot with that.
Assuming no traffic.
And the second is, will this have solar on the roof?
Currently, it does not.
We did speak to our planner, Ryan, about that, and they are exploring that option.
Maybe I missed something. What's driving the need to do this?
A lot of staff. The expansion of our staff that we have now.
So it's if we can't accommodate the staff that we have in the current facility, so we need to expand and move offsite to accommodate that.
That's correct. And not only the staff growth, but the passenger growth, we're also running out of terminal space. So we're having to create additional terminal circulation space for the passenger as well.
Okay.
And I think you answered this in your presentation. Is there a concern with senior management not being on site? Is there a concern with that, or have we thought about it?
We've all thought about that, and we are all clinging to this space, not wanting to leave. A lot of us are. And I'm sure staff can attest to that as well. But we also we think that we could still continue operations in another building here or there, whichever it may be.
Okay, and it sounded like it's not a novel idea. Some other airports operate that way.
That's correct.
Okay.
Victoria, following on, Commissioner Caldwell, in your, staff report on page 6, I found it interesting. One of the things we talk about is the initiative aligning with the city council's, economic development and our strategic priority for guest experience. I'm a little concerned if we don't have a carve out for a guest experience staff member to be here on site, to actually see our guests and talk to our guests and work with the navigators. Is there a plan to at least have maybe a hybrid space or a hotel space? And maybe that's the answer, right? To have that person here when they're needed to be here, because that just feels to me like a missing part.
Yeah, that's not missing. We didn't miss that part. So we plan on keeping some office space here it's like pop-in space, a common use space for staff. The plan is to have a manager and a director on site at all times. We'll rotate that out, figure that out as we go.
Perfect, thank you.
Is this space still here?
I'm sorry?
Is this space going to still be
This
here?
will stay.
Thank you.
Other questions? So, assuming that council approves this, you'll be in by the end of the year.
That's the intent.
All right, we'll continue to use this space for our meetings.
Yes.
And we'll have guest relations people closer to the customer, what space for them to be.
Yes.
That really. Okay.
Commissioner Valdez?
Any idea how much renovation cost of the new place would be? I know it's not part of the 1.72, but.
We did project that out. I don't have that in the report here. I can get back to you on that.
And lastly, are our meeting location gonna change?
It will stay here.
And we stay here.
Okay.
We stay here in this beautiful new conference room. With functional IT. Right, any other questions? It's exciting. It's exciting. How do you feel about this, Harry? You just feel more space, give everybody one spot?
I feel great about it. I mean, obviously, it's scary for a lot of the staff, including myself. We've lived in this building for, I've been here for 5 years. Ramon has been here for upwards of 20. That said, this is what happens when airports grow. So we're excited about it. And I will also add that as we develop some of the northern concourse space and the southern concourse space, we're going to be adding office space back into that. So there will be an opportunity for at least some staff to migrate back in.
Please.
What's the anticipated time frame on the alternate uses that have been proposed as to when decisions would be made and the input the commission would have around those possibilities?
Plan on making those decisions this year.
There's been this discussion, just for the sake of chatting about this, about, do we put an airport lounge in here? And while it sounds like a great idea, there's been a lot of discussion about, we're not an airport where people transfer. So why would people want to hang out in a lounge? And that was one comment we've heard a lot from people. And the other second thing is, we're known for having the outdoor space. And people enjoy our outdoor space. That's the second piece, like, why would you build a lounge when people love being outdoors? And the third, and I think the most important one, is the cost of building. And you mentioned that in your note. The cost of building steps, elevators, escalators up to the secure space. And you know how good we are at that. So, because when people hear this, that's one thing we talk about. Well, maybe they'll put a lounge up here, but I think it's more complicated. About talking about.
I do think, I mean, as a representative from a city that is not immediately adjacent to the airport, I mean, for those of us who have to travel with greater uncertainty around the amount of time we will be here, if there is a desire for those of us who still work and to be doing such things, I mean, if you're traveling certainly from Mid or East Valley, there's a lot more uncertainty in that than driving a mile or two and knowing that you're going to be. So that would be a variable that I would think might be differently experienced for those of us who live.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons. Absolutely, yeah. So we'll talk more about that, and we have to the end of the year to figure out how we redeploy this space. All right. Any other comments? Any comments from the public?
On Zoom, please raise your virtual Zoom hand. Anyone in the room? No public comments.
So today we broke the record for the noise committee, which usually meets for 5 minutes. And for 45 minutes. I'm going to ask Chairman Bob.
Good evening, everybody. Usually the noise committee is a little halcyon committee that meets for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then they say, well, for a handful of complaints, and we log them, we check a little bit, and that's about it. And just so that you know, for last quarter, fourth quarter of 2025, there were 9 complaints about noise, mostly the commercial aircraft. Not terribly out of line, given that it's sort of our busier season. But January, from the beginning of January and right now, today's the 21st, there were 178 complaints. Most of those came from the city of Indian Wells. As we have learned, there has been a change in the way the FAA routes traffic into Palm Springs Airport. And I'm not a good explainer of that, so if Commissioner Valdez could just sort of chime in a little bit about what he's learned about that.
So I'll give you a little background of how this all came about through Indian Wells. About halfway through December, I get a call from the Indian Wells City Manager. And even though we have Indian Wells meeting. The mayor's getting lots of complaints about noise from the airport overhead. Right? Said he wants to know if you can find out what's going on. Okay, let me get back to you. I noticed it as well. It's not that hard to see every, 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, about every 5 minutes, there's a plane coming over my house. In exactly the same spot at pretty much the same altitude. So I looked into the approach into runway 31 left because that's the runway they're using. And sure enough, about mid-June, we had a change to the approach. The approach is new. Jake's presentation, if you were here, you saw that. And so it kind of confirms what I thought. So that is the reason why we have this increased noise and traffic over Indian Wells. So I called the city manager and said, this is what's going on. He goes, okay, great. The mayor would like for you to brief the city council and the mayor at the next city council meeting. Not a problem, I can do that. And he goes, oh, by the way, this is a big item for him. Okay, that's fine. So between that conversation and the conversation of actually sitting down with the city council and talking about it, I just said, well, can we make a change? Is that possible? I understand that planes on the ground belong to Palm Springs Airport. That's a given. The minute they lift off, they belong to FAA. So that's their space. I get that part. So I started to inquire around, look around. I called the local FSDO, Riverside FSDO, which is Flight Standard District Office, which is, I assume, the entity that oversees Palm Springs Airport. So that was my first, because I want to see if there's a process on how to do this. So I randomly call them up. I explain what's going on. They say, oh, that's great. Why don't you email? If you want to set up an appointment, you can email and we'll set up a time. I said, oh, that's fantastic. Well, that was 2 weeks ago. I've yet to hear from FSDO. So, and that's one of the numbers that on the letter that you get when you submit a noise comment form is that FSDO. So, okay, I'll look back to them again here next week and kind of prod them along and see what's going on. The other thing I did is I went and looked on the FAA and I found the FAA noise portal that Jake talked about, that, this is where we should be directing our noise issues to. So they actually got back to me at a reasonable time. And this was their response back. Good morning, Mr. Valdez. The primary purpose of Aeronautical Information Portal is for reporting data issues. The noise abatement concern you have would have to be handled by the airports. And they proceeded to give me a link to who I should talk to at the airport. I said, well, I know who to talk to at the airport. So the FAA has already told me, look, you need to go back to the airport, which is kind of what I thought was going to happen anyway. So when I went back to the city council and I briefed them, and there was probably 75 to 100 residents at Indian Wells, but I've never seen more than 20 at a city council meeting. And I explained the approach and what was going on and that sort of stuff. And the mayor said, okay, that's fine. Is there anything that we as the citizens can do? And I said, well, you can let the airport know that this is a concern. And I gave them the link for the noise form comments. Bam, 175 responses later. That's why you got a sudden uptick, because I reported this on last Wednesday. So that's why you have the increase of noise comment forms. So this is kind of where we're at. And that's kind of the background of how this all came about. Like I said, this is an important issue for this mayor. He also told me, because I know that Orange County had a departure procedure moved in 2016, 2017. Apparently it was going over Huntington Beach. And those residents didn't like it. So he's looking around himself. So I have to be proactive, because if he asks me questions and I say, I don't know, then that doesn't look good for me. So that's kind of why I'm kind of doing this sort of stuff. So I said, let me look into the 2016. And that's exactly what happened. There was a departure procedure out of Orange County. They changed it. I don't know how they changed it, but he's under the assumption now that, we could possibly get the FAA to change it. So this is kind of where we're at. And that's what this meeting was about today. So that's the background.
So you're going to do color commentary?
Yeah,
Kind of summarize what we're doing.
just from, a federal law perspective, PSP does not have jurisdiction over flight paths, altitudes, departures, arrivals. Once a flight is in the air, PSP, it's not in our realm anymore. It's the FAA's jurisdiction. So very interesting that they would tell you to reach back out to the airport.
That's from the FAA. So I think going forward, what we need to do is probably establish some sort of contact with the FAA. I don't have that contact. I'm not from here. I don't have those relationships. And maybe Harry and his staff ask somebody over there with the equivalent of a POI, a principal operations inspector. I don't have that, but I think we probably need to contact them and say, okay, this is what we have going on. Is there anything we can do to amend, to change, to go forward with this? Because it's a big issue for Indian Wells.
Yeah, and Commissioner and Chair, I think my team's committed to trying to run that down. We did speak about this in the committee earlier. The FAA can be interesting, for lack of a better term, matrix of offices that you have to navigate. So finding the right people, A, who made the decision, but then B, who to talk to about changing it, can take some time. But I think my team is interested in figuring out what happened here and really identifying for them the trend that's changed, and seeing where that goes. So
I did tell the mayor that this is gonna take time. This isn't gonna happen in 6 months or even a year. This is gonna take a little bit of time to do. So he's okay with that as long as we're moving the ball down the field. I think he's okay with that, so.
So let's put it on next month's agenda. We'll follow up on this issue. Let me make one other suggestion. Jake, if you can take that presentation and then distribute it to the rest of the commission. It's really interesting to understand what the rules are. So if you ever get questions on noise, you'll have a perspective. And that's what Jake presented to the noise committee. So we'll share that with everybody. So if you weren't here for that, take a listen to that when you get a chance. And we all get a little bit smarter about the dealers with noise.
I think I missed the point. The flight path changed because.
I don't know why.
You don't know.
I don't know why. The FAA, I actually asked Jepson Sanderson, which is a company that prints those approaches. That's
Okay,
what I
all
used for years and years and years. I even asked them if I could get the previous approach. And they said no. I think it's a liability issue with that more than anything else, because if I was to get that approach and then go fly and then something happened, then they would be responsible for it. So, and it really doesn't matter what the old approach was. We just want to look going forward as to how we can remedy this issue that we have.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I think the other interesting thing we learned was when the FAA makes those changes to approaches, there's no mechanism in place to alert the airport.
Actually, when I was looking, they're kind of supposed to. They have something called an airport layout plan, I think, is what I read. So they should contact the airport and say, hey, how is this going to impact your, not necessarily the airport itself. I mean, if you buy a house within 2 miles of an airport, you're buying a house within 2 miles of an airport, right? That's on you. But these people in Indian Wells live probably about 12 miles away. It is now impacting their real estate value, because now if you go to sell your house, a realtor now has to say that, do you live under a flight path? You'd have to disclose it. So that's one of the things that has everybody in an uproar is that. So, but then again, the FAA, when they design an approach or departure, they don't really talk about the people on the ground. It's all about what's in the air. But I did find something that they're kind of supposed to talk to the airport and go, hey, how's this going to impact? Obviously, they didn't do it in this situation.
So for the record, we appreciate the folks from Indian Wells, several of came and presented today. We hear it and we'll continue to follow up and see what the appropriate next steps may be. And thank you for the effort and thank you for the effort for putting this together. And thank you. Well done. I'll share your presentation. We'll be smarter about it. Any other questions on this? Okay, enough noise.
Anyone from the public on Zoom, please raise your virtual Zoom hand. Members from the public, anyone in the room? No public comments.
Daniel.
Hello, everybody. Well, 2025 came in as a new record year for us. Very excited about that. We had 104,000 passengers. Previous record was in 2023. We exceeded 2024 by 2.4%. We flip over to the next page. November traffic was down 0.8%. But compared to 2024, that one actually caught me off guard a little bit because I was checking out my data sources, which is our TSA throughput, and we were up significantly in November. And going back and looking at our systems, I noted a number of cancellations primarily due to weather. There were some weather events in late November, mid to late November, that canceled quite a bit of flights in and out of here. So when I looked at the comparison to when the passengers being down, the throughput TSA checkpoint did not line up. The people actually showed up, which tells me they came before their flight. Flight was probably canceled, delayed, either went home and didn't fly again, or maybe got rerouted out of another airport. But it should have been in a good month. But either way, the year ended up well. December was down a little bit as well too. This is the first month we didn't have Frontier and both Avelo here, so some reductions in that. Canadian passengers were due to continue to see a decline in that one, 8.2% on arriving passengers in November, and then 2.24% in December. The next page for Canadian originating flights. These are just ones that are scheduled to come into Palm Springs. In February, we're down 11% or 48 flights, roughly 2 a day. March also down 11% with about 28 flights total for the month, so just less than 1 a day. And then April currently scheduled down 13 flights to be arriving from Canada. Looking on to the domestic capacity, we do see some boosts there. February is up 10% in domestic seats. March is up 4%. April's down 3.8%, but I will note that is not a surprise. Just if you guys remember back in July, I reported some information from the airlines gave me at a meeting we had last June. The airlines got a little aggressive in their scheduling for Coachella and Stagecoach last April, and they realized they actually put in too much capacity and it didn't perform as well as they'd hoped. So they were planning to do a reduction around the same time frames for this coming April. So what we're seeing here is what they told us they're going to be doing last year. So that's not a surprise to us on that front. Total seats, we add in Canada and the US. February is up 2.9%. March is down just 1%. April's down 4.1%. But I will note that the seats for this year, while we may be down those 2 months compared to 2025, we're still tracking ahead of where we were in 2024. So it's not too significant of a change. Just a quick little update on seasonal end dates right there for you. The next slide on our current seasonal routes are going to be ending. I can't announce just yet, but one of these seasonal routes will be converting to full-time this year. We'll continue through the summer, but I can tell you on Friday. We're in a public meeting. I can't say it right now. Moving on to our communications, we have created a new, which also comes out of our guest experience plan, we call the PSP Insider. It's simply just a newsletter for internal uses with PSP staff and also our tenant staff. So the airlines, the rental cars, anyone working on airport property. We'll be using this to provide information on airport projects, unscheduled events, like say the escalators go down again, we can tell them why it went down, so they have correct information for a passenger, and then also give them anticipated schedules on when they'll be back up. Then the other information is primarily going to be used to relay information that could impact their operations and also the passengers. And again, like I note here, having that and communicating with our staff will help reduce the river bill. Looking on ahead, guest experience, we have the recharge bar is complete. The seats of the stools arrived. They were offloaded on the ships. They've been installed out there on the Bono Concourse. We were going to be putting 5 in there, but we went to do the install. The section closest to the water fountains, an ADA water fountain, we were able to install that one. So we did put 4 in there. People do like it, and they are using it quite a bit. Something else in guest experience, our security team is leading the Blue campaign with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security for human trafficking. It's a new safety awareness campaign for the airport. Staff will be trained to recognize and report concerns of potential human trafficking. We'll have the informational materials posted throughout the terminals, such which you'll see most commonly in airports is inside stalls and restrooms with phone numbers and instructing people who may be being trafficked what they can do to get help. And this will also be helping to reinforce a safe, informed, and welcoming airport environment. And as we know, if you feel safe, it also helps improve your overall guest experience at the airport too. And then leading and finalizing just community engagement, we're going to be participating as the airport for the first time in the Cathedral City LGBT Plus Days. That's the weekend of March 6th through the 8th. It'll be a bronze sponsor this year. And so if you guys are out and about in Cat City during those days, come out and join us. Any questions?
Questions, comments? With today's announcement, with Allegiant purchasing Sun Country, is there any indication that it's going to change?
No, it's too early to tell. They've only announced there's regulatory approvals they have to get through first. So right now it's status quo operation as is 2 separate airlines. So hopefully not. Minneapolis has always been a very strong performer for Sun Country in the network, so I imagine Allegiant will keep that. I think.
Please, go ahead.
How are the load factors on the Newark ground?
I haven't got an update yet on that one, but I will be seeing some United Network planners actually 2 weeks and be talking to them on the outside.
Please.
When I was on the last United flight to DC, it was crowded.
I've heard it's been for DC.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that would do well. Charlotte, the load factor's been performing well in Charlotte as well. It's just Saturday only right now, but if that does well, then maybe American will add additional service. So
Still no direct service or discussions to Boston?
not at this time, no. Nobody's particularly interested.
I need to schedule a meeting of the marketing subcommittee, but I'll wait to discuss that for commissioner requests. Anything else? Daniel, we're good?
No, that's all I had.
We're good. All right, thank you for that. Victoria?
Before we go on, anyone from the public wish to make a public comment on Zoom, please raise your virtual Zoom hand. No one from the public, anyone in the room? No public comments.
Victoria?
All right, good evening. We're gonna review the financial summary for December 31, 2025. This is again, just a snapshot in time. We took the financial review on the 15th of the month, so we may still have some entries that are getting posted. But I'll just go over really briefly the different funds that we have. So Fund 405 has a surplus of about 1.4 million. You will see that that's a 43% decrease when you compare it to last year around the same time. That is primarily due to some accounting adjustments. So there's a market value adjustment for about 864,000, as well as the quarterly interest income did not get posted in December. It got posted. It's getting posted in January. So when we review our financials for the next month, we should have an increase of 500,000 plus whatever kind of CFC charges that we collect for the month of January. For the Fund 405, which is our customer facility charges, there's a surplus of about, Fund 410, passenger facility charges. There's a surplus of about 2 million. This is our normal passenger facility charge account. It represents about 34% of the full year budget. Fund 415 is our airport operation and maintenance account. Right now, you'll see that there's a deficit of about 5.4 million, but that's in line with what we had prior fiscal year. This is primarily due to some seasonality in nature of the airport. We primarily receive a majority of our revenues that we get for the airport during our March and April timeframe. So we'll see a very high uptick in our revenues there. One thing that I was gonna jump through the details of the revenues and expenses, but Commissioner Martin, did you have any questions that you wanted to go through about those?
You want me to do that here? I did send you an email. I
Oh, okay.
don't wanna.
I could just quickly go through some items that you had brought up because I thought that they were pretty, a good observation. So in our airport operations maintenance fund, there's all other revenue that shows a decrease of about 90%. And one of the big things that's there is there's an accounting entry. I'm not sure if the finance director, Chris Mooney's on the line here. He can explain it a little bit more, but there's a really large accounting entry that happened. It's about 900,000. So it shows that we're not, it shows as if we're not collecting enough revenue, but we actually are. So we are still in a surplus for our revenues in that of all other revenue accounts. It's just there's an accounting entry. I don't know, Chris Mooney's on.
Yeah, I could answer that, Victoria. Good evening. Just real quick, so we make annual audit entries for our annual audit, and this is one of those entries where we book an annual gain on our total investment portfolio, and it's spread across all the funds that have cash balances. And so in 25, in June, the airport had a significant gain on their portfolio of $900,000. Well, as a practice, we reverse that entry and we true it up again in the next June. So really it is skewing the results here. We need to take it out. We don't like to do that because it's a manual adjustment to an automated report, but we will take it out for future presentations because it does skew the results pretty significantly. But that's what it is. We have a few more of those accounting type of entries that we do annually. That reverse out in the next year. And so most of the time they're not noticeable. This one happens to be very noticeable. So we're going to manually adjust the statements and take it out for a future presentation.
Thank you, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I just wanted to note our advertising was down about 10% when you compare it to prior year. And a lot of that is like our local advertising. It hasn't been that strong this year. Fuse is still advocating very strongly on, our advertising in the valley, and regionally, but that is one of the areas that decreased there. So, that's where you'll see a difference in, our revenues. And then, looking into the details of our operating expenses, you'll see some high numbers, like changes when you compare it to prior year. Some different accounts we have because, our planning and projects account, for instance, now we have all of the salaries and benefits that's going to those accounts, for the planning and engineering team, since we've have a full staff now. And then, our aviation security, we've made some adjustments, moving, the classifications into the correct cost centers to start accounting for that. So there are some additional expenses that we incurred for our passenger boarding bridges. However, that is 100% funded by the airlines. So, at the end of the year, we do true up, and, if there's any kind of deficits, the airlines will cover the cost, 100% of those expenses, at least for the passenger boarding bridges and the baggage handling system. So other than that, I think that may have addressed.
The
most
main
of the
question I had was, if you take out that budget transfer line, which is kind of just moving money around.
Oh, yes.
Your actual expenditures look like they're going up 20% year over year instead of the 5% on this report. And so is that 20% in alignment with the budget? Are we somehow incurring expenses that we didn't anticipate? Just wanted to get your sense on overall backing out that transfer line.
Yes, and thank you for pointing out the budget transfer, because that is a transfer out of our Fund 415 and into our Fund 416 to help support our capital projects.
Right.
Because we haven't had a lot of expenses hits for our capital projects, we haven't had to do any of those budget transfers. When we look at Fund 416, you'll see that there's a surplus of about almost $2 million. So we don't need to move that right now. Essentially, it's another one of those line items that probably could get backed out, because it's really transferring money from our fund balance, not necessarily our operational account. So,
But that's why I backed that out. So if you take it out of both years, that's where I see expenses actually going up 20%.
right,
So if you negate the fund transfer, pretend it doesn't exist, all your other expenses are at 20%. Because
Yes.
that's actually.
and so primarily that's in our salaries and benefits because of the hiring of our staff.
Okay, and it's all planned and it's all good.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
just want to make sure that.
Yes, because we financially, we review our budget every week, actually. The whole team does, and we are on track with our budget for this time of the year.
Great.
And then I reviewed earlier that we have about 2.5 million in our Fund 416, so we're operating at a surplus there. So, does anybody have any questions about the financials? Okay.
Questions?
Anyone from the public on Zoom, please raise your virtual Zoom hand. Doesn't look like we have anybody from the public. Anyone in the room? No public comments.
Victoria, thanks, Chris, for sticking around. Appreciate that. Okay, Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be providing some updates on our capital projects at our meeting. The first one is our Bono Farm Road escalator. So we have selected a vendor. Kindle Group has been selected. They were here in December last month for a detailed investigation on site for our escalators. So that means that they were doing all the measurements so we can start fabrication. The next step is that we are going back to the city council to rectify the contract. The reason we are going back is because if you remember that we did this procurement under emergency. What that means is that we selected 3 or 4 vendors, had them give us a proposal which is best suited for the airport, and that's how we select the Schindler Group. So we're going back to the council for contract ratification, and then we're expecting that the drawings or the submittal will come in February. We are still on schedule to have the installation around June of this year and ending in September, which was the original schedule that we have provided. That we haven't seen any delays as of right now to that schedule. So we'll be keeping you guys updated on this project. The second one is our Measure G project, which is the PNC share structure. So we have received 2 proposals, and we are actually reviewing those proposals. By review, we means that we look into the factor as if how much shade studies have been done, how much shade will be available for those shade structures, or what is the lead time for those shade structures, and also what utilities have to be moved. And we also will be coordinating with the HSPB, which is the Historic Site Preservation Board. So we are expecting by mid-February, we will move forward to set something on their commission to present them the design that we have and move forward with that. And we're expecting a really fast turnaround, real lead time. And hopefully by the summer of this year or late summer, we should have these shear structures installed. So just for the visibility, these will be installed on the south side of the Wexler terminal, which is the TNC one. So which is less kind of, on the main south side. The next one is another critical project, which is our out baggage handling project. So we have our general contractor already mobilized. We are having a pre-construction meeting on January 29th, which is a big deal. And we actually have all those stakeholders in line for that. As of right now, till now and end of February, March, we are doing a lot of site investigation. What that means is that they're doing underground investigation on where these vehicles go on. Actually, the first investigation starts next week. And it needs a lot of coordination from the airport staff, which we work with operations and maintenance to make this happen. So the first 3-4 months investigation on the utilities and the site investigation. And then we'll start some demo of some of the areas that needs to be done. So as I said, it's a three-year project, and we are having weekly meetings with our general contractor, weekly meetings with our construction management team, and one of our priority project for sure. The next project is our design for the restroom, which is Bono and the courtyard. So design phase is almost complete. Our 90% design drawings are ready, and they have been actually submitted to the city for review. What that means is that the city staff and our planning staff will review all those drawings and issue all the conditions and the permits that will be needed for us to go to procure the general contractor. So we are we finalized the design, and now we are in the construction phase of the project, where I think hopefully this week we will be giving the drawings to the planning team for them. This is sometimes takes about 1 to 2 months of process for planning to review those, give comments back, and then our designer have to address those comments and give it back. But however, one of our aviation planner is staying on top of this project to make sure that if we can shortcut some time, we will be working with that.
We have budget for this, correct? To redo these bathrooms?
We have built it into our plan for, I believe, next year, 2027, but we also applied for grant funding for that. So we're waiting to hear from FAA on the funding.
The next project is our 8 EV trucks for our maintenance and operations staff. So those are scheduled to be here by end of this month. In the interim, we are also working with the fleet department to make sure that we have the radios, the lighting, and the make-ready equipment ready. So very positive on the response that we are getting from the Department of Fleet, that we will be having all this equipment ready when the trucks are here, so they will be ready to go both airside and landside. The next one is our conference room remodel. Everything is finished on this project. The only outstanding item are the permanent doors. They are coming on last week of this month, around January 30th, they should be installed. And that is the last outstanding item. And the reason we are having temporary doors is because we had a long lead item. We know that they will be coming here in late January, but we want to complete this ready in December. So that's why we have this temporary door installed.
How about this AV system? Is this working?
The AV system, actually, this is working.
Yeah, AV system.
Yeah, it is working. There is some fine tuning that is still happening with our IT team, especially the outside the scheduler. We are working on that, but those are more internal. We still have a retention to be paid to the general contractor in case something we need their help. They're still on our books for that, so they're not off the hook. If in any case we have to reach out to contractor or the subcontractor.
Because right now we're using the OWL, but that's going to go away, right?
That's going to go away. Okay. Are we on OWL or are we on? Okay, yeah, that's going to go away. It should be totally without OWL. We should have these 2 microphones and all the 6 speakers working, and then all the programming with the video should be done too. And the last one is our AD EV charger installation. We are working with our procurement. The lowest bidder that we have was about close to $60,000. They were not able to fulfill all the public requirements of procurement. Some of the documentation was missing. So we reached out to the second lowest bidder to install these chargers. The difference is only like $200. They're $200 more than the lowest bidder. And I'm working very closely with the procurement to have them notice to proceed. Once we do that, we'll have them on site. Our goal is not to dedicate those parking lot if possible. So that way there's no inconvenience to the public, and we are expecting them to be installed in 30 to 45 days. With this, I'm happy to answer any questions or any additional questions.
Questions? The design of the shade structures, which is going to the historic group, are we gonna see other designs as well?
Yes, I think once they are, approved by historic board, it would be bringing to the commission.
Does it make sense to have us see it before it goes to them, or does it matter?
We wanted to clear it with the historic board first, because that's usually the showstopper. So if they're okay with it, then bring it to the commission.
Okay. All right. Please.
And on the approval for the bathroom designs, does that have to, you're saying that has to go, one of these have to go through the city?
Yes.
Is that outsourced to San Diego or is that done with internal staff?
I think city has a third party to do their plan check. I can get back with the exact answer, but my understanding is that it goes to our city plan department. And they have a third party plan check who takes some of their workload and do that. But it has to be within the city of Palm Springs. It's stamped by the city of Palm Springs.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Going twice.
There's-
Where do we get the update on parodies? Do we talk about this here or just in terms of the construction and what they've told us? Do we do that here? Should I do that in our commissioner stuff?
I think now would be a good time to do that.
All right, so
at
we've
least
had a series of meetings with parodies. This has to do with construction of these projects. Victoria, you just want to give us a quick summary? Or I can do it?
Just on the construction.
On the construction piece, they have provided us a schedule. And the schedule says that they're gonna start construction, at the end of May. They should be done by September.
This is Movie Colony Canteen.
Yes, is that correct, Harmon?
Yes.
Yes.
So that with projects moving forward, they continue to work on the rodent issues and mitigation of rodent issues. And there have been changes to the menu downstairs in Las Consuelas, and that plus the movement of people seems to be working well. So those of you on the ad hoc committee for concessions, that's kind of the update that we wanted to tell you relative to the major projects. That's all.
Anything else to add, Lowell?
You good, Lowell? Yes, I should have asked you too. Okay, good.
We don't have anybody from the public on Zoom, but anybody in the room wish to make a public comment? No public comments.
Transition to a new email distribution.
So, good evening, commissioners. So to improve the coordination, ensure coverage, and support timely responses to commission-related communications, the airport is transitioning to a centralized email distribution system. So effective immediately, all commission-related correspondences should be sent to the shared new inbox, which is psp.commission@palmspringsca.gov. This shared inbox will serve as the primary point of contact for the Airport Commission and committees and will be monitored daily by airport staff to ensure prompt review and follow-up, including during periods when the primary administrative contact is out of the office. Commissioners will receive a confirmation email from this address tomorrow, Thursday, January 22nd, to ensure it is easily accessible. Moving forward, all commission-related emails should be directed exclusively to this shared inbox, and we can answer any questions you may have.
We have to be careful. This is for information only. Jeremy, this is not for any decision-making, anything else that's gonna violate our Brown Act.
Correct. It will still be sending it when we send the email. Sorry, Jeremy, I'll let you go first.
Well, I guess I was just going to point out that, it is just a new way of allowing staff to track emails and ensure that potentially, staff, there isn't like an email buried in one particular staff member's email inbox about potentially like an item to add to a meeting or something like that. So it's Brown Act compliant. It's fine from that.
We still intend to BCC all commissioners when we send out emails as well from this email. Any other questions?
I'm all good. Public good. We're all good
We have nobody on Zoom. Anybody in the room wish to make a public comment?
about our new email system. Disappointed.
No public comment.
Okay, I want to hold on committee updates. I'll do this during Commissioner Singh. Let's go to Perry's report if we can.
So a few interesting things to report. First thing is, our concessions programs, both concessionaires have been
Wait,
nominated.
we actually need to go back real quick. We missed the future city council update,
Oh,
item 7I. Apologies.
Victoria, you want to comment about this?
Yes.
Let's go into council. This is on item 7 right here.
Or actually, item. Future city council update is the one. And then we have the committee.
Future city council update.
The last page of this.
I believe, okay, so request for proposal, that one? Oh, here we go. Okay. So on January 28th, we have the Fuse Connect amendment that's going to city council, as well as a bid for the monitoring wells. This item actually has been pulled from the agenda, the leasing policy. And then the airport program management and advisory consulting services, which you heard earlier today from Accenture. And then on February 11th, we intend to take the emergency escalator repair, and control touch is no longer being taken to city council, so that item will be removed. Any questions?
Anyone from the public wish to make a public comment in the room? And there's nobody on Zoom. No public comment.
Let's go to your report, please.
We actually have your item that you had asked.
I'm gonna do that.
Oh, you wanted to.
So both concessionaires, Parodies and WH Smith have been nominated for the Airport Experience Awards. Just kind of an overview of what that is the Airport Experience Awards they assess awards and airport experience for airports in North America. So that includes both the US and Canada. And so our concessionaires have been nominated for Best Commercial Team, for Best Casual Dining Concept, and that's for Trio. And then for Best Local Concessions Management Team. And we are competing with airports like San Jose, Houston Hobby, Cincinnati, Calgary, Kelowna, Southwest Florida, Raleigh, Durham, Albuquerque, and a number of others. So just wanted to give kudos to both concessionaires for the hard work that they've been doing over the last couple of years to really enhance our concessions experience. Those awards are expected to be announced next month, actually, in Nashville, and so we'll let you know if you want anything. In other news, the 6th rental car is now operating. They started on Saturday. And we're already getting both bookings and returns. So had 21 bookings right out of the gate, and people were returning from their one-way trips. So everything seems to be going well right now. We did, as an executive team, take about a 30-minute tour out there just to make sure things were humming along. But we also have some ideas about how to make some operational adjustments so that it's more efficient out there. And we'll be bringing those to the commission.
Do you have to give up spaces from the other ones to provide room for space?
No, we did not.
But they're out there.
They're out there. They're out there operating. Kicked our employees out of the lot, but they're out there.
Great.
Let's see, the art program, I believe Christina plans to bring a plan in February. So we'll be hearing more from Christina next month. We talked about real property negotiation for the administration building, so that's moving along. And then the only other thing is the Fuse lobby space, and maybe Victoria want to touch on that.
Sure. And then I'm going to turn it over. Actually, Harmon, do you want to talk on the Fuse lobby space?
Sure. So just to provide some update, we have been engaging Fuse, they engaged us last quarter of 25. We have been working with them at a bi-weekly meeting. In November of last year, they've selected Fenwell, the same company which did the Agua Caliente, space for us. The only difference is that on this particular space, it's actually on the Wexler terminal. So we have our aviation planner, my team, and all of our team is involved up front. Last week, we did receive a conceptual design from them, and which actually we are scheduled to meet with Fuse tomorrow with our staff to talk about it, what the plan is, and how we can help them to, if we have to go with the plannings or any other approvals because of the historical building. So we'll work with them. We are at very preliminary stage right now. We just received their conceptual design, and tomorrow we are meeting with them for the first time after receiving those design. for further discussion and some ideas.
So do we have to go to the historical group for approval for this?
We don't know how much they're doing. I mean, it's on the terminal. So the last was on the concourse.
Yeah.
So just to be mindful of that, what we have a little hiccup, there was like some older building was exposed, so we did some asbestos. It was negative, which is good. It didn't delay our project.
During the.
So we are just all the layers, we just want to make sure that, we are proactively approaching that rather than reactively stopping it. So that's the whole purpose, is that this is collective effort towards what do's and don'ts are and how we can approach as a team.
So a couple updates on our side. So they've identified a group of potential sponsors for this. And they need to raise $150,000. Plus the contractor has agreed to kick in 50, give us $200,000 to activate this space. So we're working with some of these potential sponsors. The reason I know this is because the theater is one of those potential sponsors. So we're working with them on that, trying to find money to support this $150,000 plus $50,000 the contractors can put in. I want to schedule, if this makes sense, a meeting of the marketing subcommittee to take a look at the rendering and hear some of the ideas of the plans. Because the timetable we're working at right now, if we're lucky, we'd love to have this done and ready to roll April 1st. Now, if this has to go to historical folks, who knows what happens at that timeline, but our hope is that we can get this thing activated. From the contractor's point of view, they're saying they can do it. So we're open for Coachella. So to be ready April 1st. So if there's delays relative to other approvals that need to be involved with this, we'd like to know sooner than later, like soon. But just a heads up to the marketing subcommittee, we'd like to schedule a meeting soon, like in the next week. And we'll get out to you to check your schedules to see if you're available to participate. So you can see the renderings, provide your input and some ideas, and move forward. So Harry, assuming that staff make some progress and we clarified the issues that Harmon talked about, and the marketing subcommittee is involved, so we have some commission involvement as well. Do we need to take this to the full commission for approval, or can we continue to move forward with this project?
That is completely up to you.
Okay, what I'm going to ask you is if marketing is clear, and and we'll socialize to the rest of the organization, as the rest of the commission as well. We want to keep this moving. Because right now we have a contractor, it's the city, or the staff has demoed the space, we are ready to move. And if we can keep it moving forward, we'll, and our commitment is to talk to you all, or to communicate with you all so you see it. But the input will come from the marketing committee. Are we all cool with that? All right. This is gonna be great. And if we can move this quickly and have it ready for Coachella, and if some or all of these potential sponsors, which we won't socialize at this time, but marketing committee we will, say yes to this deal, we can have this thing up and running, which would be great, which would be another great milestone for us to move quickly on this. And again, kudos to our partners at Fuse. We asked them to take the lead on this thing. Jeffrey Bernstein has been involved in this from the very beginning. So if we can make this thing move quickly, we're going to do it. And, so we have something to celebrate by our April meeting. Anything else on your list? No. Any other questions here, please? Okay, so for marketing folks, be prepared to hear for those dates, and we'll get that done in the next week. And we'll stay in touch in your meeting tomorrow. That's great. Any other questions on this? Okay, what's next? Now we go to our commissioner reports. Okay.
Your committee.
Yes. So a couple things. We have vacancies on certain committees, subcommittees. Can you just review those for me again, please?
So we have a vacancy on the budget. And the operations.
That's two of the important ones. So let me ask, are there commissioners who are not on those committees interested in joining those committees? Anybody want to join budget that's not on it at this point? Okay, we'll come back to you. Operations. All right, good. We may have to come back and appoint some folks, but let me do that diligence. I wanted to bring it to you first. Here's our second request. So I will follow up on this. We'll have one-on-one conversations about this. And I'll talk to the chairs of both of those committees about how we want to move forward. So the other thing I want to ask for is there are a variety of RFPs that are in process right now. And trying to keep track of what's out for RFPs, what else is out, and then which commissioners are assigned to those RFPs in the decision process. We want to find a way to track this more effectively. So I've asked staff if they would, on this page, list the open RFPs that are in consideration now and which commissioners have been assigned to those RFPs. Some individuals have been asked to join the decision committees on those. So can we go ahead and list those on this page so we always have an update? And for those RFPs that have not been assigned commissioners, we'll make those decisions and I'll get to individual commissioners to join those. Are we okay, staff, doing that? Okay. So for example, on the Accenture decision team, we did not have representation for the commission. It's fine. But in futures, I just want to be able to track the RFPs so we have the answer to make sure we're having the input. Fair enough? Everybody go over that? Staff, are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
All right, good. Let's list it, get it to me, and if there's openings that have not been assigned yet, we'll reach out to individual commissioners that have to do it. Okay. Are there any other commissioners' requests or comments? Please.
Yes. So, two things. Have anybody here ever heard of the Riverside County Transportation Commission?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. So I am Desert Hot Springs designee on that, and next week on the 29th and the 30th at the Doubletree Hotel in Cathedral City, they are doing their annual workshop. It's open to the public. Kind of see what they do. It's kind of, or what it's about. It's going to have all the different representatives from the county, from the different cities throughout the county, and how that works. How that works with Coachella Valley is Riverside County Transportation Commission gets funds. That's what you see a lot of the work on the 15 and the 91 and down in Temecula and Marietta and these type of areas. And bulk of the money goes that way. But then a percentage of that money comes here. And then it goes to CVAG, which is Coachella Valley Area Association of Governments. And then they have the transportation committee, and then they kind of deal with the Monroe interchange and other projects that we've been on. So it's kind of interesting to see just kind of how it flows. There's a lobbyist from Washington that'll show up and they'll talk about what's going on in Washington, D.C. and transportation funds and these kinds of things. And they do dabble in the area of aviation as well. Not a whole lot, but you'll see some of the discussion on it just because it does tie in the area of transportation and what have you. But just kind of, I mean, it's right here, local, if board want to get and want to learn a little bit about it, or just a little bit kind of seeing who it is, what it's about, maybe get an agenda and take it with you and just kind of, but you'll have consultants and contractors and the like that will go there. You'll have people from all different layers of different government there, from, congressional reps to county supervisor to county staff, city staffs, everything that's there. So, and given that it's right here local, not a bad thing. If you got a couple hours or just an hour, just want to pop on by over there. It is open to the public. There's no cost or anything. And they tend to have coffee and some of that kind of stuff too. It's available as well. So you can kind of enjoy that. It can get a little boring at times, as some of these meetings can, but I thought, I'd invite everybody if you'd like to, take a look since it's close instead of going into Temecula. Last year was Temecula. I'm sure next year it'll probably be like somewhere in Corona and whatever. So with this being in our home, our backyard, not a bad idea to get a chance to go check it out. There might be something important or somebody you might want to talk to. So at the last strategic planning meeting, when we met, I spoke about the Coachella Valley Elevated Transportation Authority. And it was a concept that a couple of us had started talking to, and the idea has grown. And so I have a request of the commission that I'd like to see. What's happened now is we met with Sunline, we met with the executive director, Mona, and she's very interested in this and says that Sunline can in fact take this type of task on. And what she's going to be visiting all the different cities and talking about what Sunline does for them. with those meetings that she's doing or presentations she's doing, obviously they're going to be getting feedback from counselors and city staff on different things. And with that, we have certain council members in different cities that are going to discuss the interest in elevated transportation mode. That would basically, we would be an endpoint, and then it could go as far down as Monroe and Fred Waring or the Polo Grounds, just kind of depending on routes and whatever anticipated direction. But there is a lot of interest. I was talking to the city manager in Rancho Mirage earlier, and interesting enough, this topic came up almost 20 years ago, and it was somebody with Rancho Mirage that tried to spearhead this. And I think the Jetsons theme was a little too early at the time, because they were still showing reruns of that. And now, you know, that we're, we're this far along, there seems to be this interest in this compaction of vehicle traffic. You know, it doesn't conflict with the CV rail, because CV rail is just a straight line, it dumps them off, but they still have to get to their destination. They still have to get to the location. This is an idea that gets you from, if you fly into the airport with the 6 million that we're getting, and they're going to go to different places. It can take them to, you know, the Hyatt, it can take them outside the area, it can take them to the grounds, wherever the route is designed. And so with that, what appears to be the goal we're trying to do is that if we get some additional feedback from cities, which so far it seems to be favorable, and it's not like any formal feedback, it's just, hey, we're interested, and then it'll go back to the Sunlight board, who has already heard the presentation. And the Sunlight board, in fact, already has kind of voiced a voice of support, but it'll have to be a formal vote on their part. And then it would create a committee, and she would probably assign, you know, a percentage of a staff member, and then they could begin, getting grants and different funding like that to begin studies and kind of focus groups and things of that nature. This is a long-term haul. This is a big thing. But when you look at where our roads are today and the congestion we've got, you know, I never thought that, that I'd have to leave at 3:15 or 3 o'clock just to get to the airport, you know, and then to get to La Quinta, it's an hour and a half, you know, these kind of things. And we're expecting, when you look at development build out, probably another 250,000 people in the Coachella Valley as full-time residents, in addition to the tourists. And so there just has to be another way. And there's only so many taxis and Ubers and the like, and so many buses. And so, fortunately, the research we've done, and I remember it was mentioned, somebody had mentioned the Seattle. So we looked at them, we looked at San Jose, we looked at some of the others. There's one in Oahu that's got this. And so it's already happening. That's there. We just a matter of, are we willing to do this? So what I would like to get is from the commission, I don't know if it can be maybe just an email or maybe just a verbal thing or something, that we would be able to say, conceptually, we like the idea, and we know it has to be not supportive of the idea, but conceptually we see that could be beneficial. There's got to be an alternative transportation mode, especially when we look at the numbers that we're expecting for the convention center, but the numbers that we're expecting to fly in. When I'm looking at 3 million and going up to 6 million, how are we going to get those people across Valley and through that? It's not going to get resolved just by taxis and buses and that kind of thing, and rental cars. It's going to have to happen a different way. I do expect that if a committee does get in place, which I'm certain that it will with the direction that we're going, that will want to have a staff member or a commissioner, depending on what Harry recommends, that would probably help serve on that if it gets to that point. But I'd like to see, if there's interest, we see that Sunlight is very interested in this. They said they could handle this. They can handle taking the lead on this. And so we're now just kind of taking it to the next level to formalize a committee with a partial staff member to kind of begin the groundwork that's needed to start it out as a conversation between two council members from Desert Hot Springs.
Commissioner Hedrick?
So several years ago, like about 6 or 7, when we were in the early stages of planning for this project, one of the things that this commission, not many people here are from that era, But it include having some form of mass transit to the airport, and that was part of the plan. And one of the goals was to have a mass transit connection to the airport and to other cities. So
Good. And as some as you probably read that, you know, I was appointed mayor pro tem in Desert Hot Springs, so this is my kickoff as mayor pro tem. It's kind of a side joke. Never mind. I don't think we need anything formal. I'm not sure, you know, Mr. Chairman, what you would recommend. And what I'm really kind of looking for is if the commission agrees, is something that is not like, hey, we're supportive, but in conceptual, you know, ideas, we like this idea. And maybe it's just an email that says, you know, from you to me that just says, hey, you know, we as a commission, you know, we believe this was an idea that we're interested in looking progressing forward, and conceptually we supported, you know, of something like that. It would help Mona, who's the executive director of Sunline, when she has to present it for a vote to the board over there, and at least does that. I mean, what the commissioner mentioned regarding, you know, 6-7 years ago is music to my ears, because it's exactly what I think we all thought about. And now here's an opportunity to actually take this to the next step. You know, this is a long-term game in what this is, but the funding, the mechanisms are out there. It's an entirely different type of funding versus rail and you know, hydrogen related type buses and these type of things. And there's examples out there that are beautiful examples that are already in play that we can look and tour and see, and you know, that would look really nice and fit well too.
I just defer to Scott. You think, you know, Ken is right, early on in our planning process, content for a long range plan, they never really went any further. We just talked about it. It's like it was a regional transportation thing and just put a placeholder in. But any guidance from your perspective?
No, the only thing I would say is that I know in presentations to the city of Palm Springs about the master plan, there was lots of city council interest in transportation, circulation, just selfishly in Palm Springs neighborhoods, what are we going to do with all this traffic that's here? How are we going to manage it? So I know our city council heard comments like that from people in the neighborhoods around the airport. So, you know, maybe the next step would be to just maybe learn a little bit more before you know, and I'd be happy to work with Harry or somebody to talk to, I know Mona, and we could reach out to her maybe and just let her know that the commission talked about this and we want to give the commission a little more information about what they're doing.
Let's start there.
Okay.
Let's start there.
Perfect.
I think that, you know, when you brought up this issue and Ken reminded me of this, just kind of put that aside. It just made our head explode because we had other stuff we had to work on.
Right.
So I think that, why don't we do that? Reach out to them and say, we're interested. Let's get smart about it and see how we can get involved.
Perfect. Okay.
Amen.
You got it.
One of the questions I forgot to ask Harry early on. I saw something about the FIS proposal, communication about that flying around that says, we're ready to roll in time for the Olympics. This is a 2-year project. We're going to move forward with this. I meant to ask you about this in your executive report. Do you have any updates on this? Because we've never seen dates or specific. I mean, thrilled about it, but is there any other progress on this that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, without making any commitments, because you know there are a number of stakeholders here, and it's all contingent on Customs and Border Protection being willing to provide us resources. One of the things I was hoping to update the commission on next month was we are making a formal request, and that's going to happen next week, to Customs and Border Protection. We had already had an initial meeting with them to walk them through some of the planning work that we've done to date over the last 2 years. And that was with the port director in LA. Very supportive response. We took that back. We refined some feedback that they wanted us to look at in terms of airline schedules and things. And now we are on track to make a formal request next week. And with that, I've got Ryan's team already working on a facility and what that looks like and how do we get that designed. So assuming that all things go well in the meeting next week, what would in theory happen is the LA Port Director signs off. He kicks it up to Washington, DC. Within 30 days, they assign a program manager and we're kind of off to the races on that.
Good luck for that. That would be next to our lovely lobby lounge downstairs. That would be a big accomplishment for us. Good luck with that. All right. Anything else I'm missing? Are we good?
Nope, we are good.
Commissioners, any other comments, questions? Going once, going twice? Thank you to staff. Thank you, Jeremy, for your presentation. We'll all behave, I promise. I try. Thank you, staff, for your preparation. Thank you, commissioners, for your time. This meeting is adjourned.